I don't know. I'm not going to bring him on. Hey, good evening, Albuquerque, New Mexico. Tonight we got a special guest on. I first want to start off by introducing myself. My name's Eric Moulton. Welcome to the Pit Press Live special edition of our live show this evening. Very special guest who I'm really honored to bring on. I had a friend that I work with, Leonard McMillan. I want to send a special shout out to him for putting us in touch. But without further ado, I want to introduce tonight's guest. We got about 40 minutes with him. His name is Mr. Sonny Vaccaro. And for those of you who don't know the name or aren't familiar with him, Sonny Vaccaro is a former Nike, Adidas, Reebok sports executive, most notably known as the executive who signed Michael Jordan to Nike. You guys might be familiar with the new movie that was released last summer, Air. That movie was pretty much about Sonny, and that movie pretty much tried to depict Sonny's influence that he had on Nike, Phil Knight, and the Jordan family, ultimately landing one of the most iconic shoe deals and shoe brand deals ever. So, Mr. Vaccaro, Sonny, thank you for joining the show. I really appreciate your time, and I look forward to tonight's conversation.
Well, Eric. I've had a great connection with New Mexico through their college teams over the years. And the young man that I knew in Pittsburgh, and he went to University named Petey Gibson. I still call him Petey. I think he goes by Pete Gibson. One of the best players ever, and especially in the 70s. He played on an iconic high school all-star game. So I want to give a shout out to Petey and just say how proud I am. I stay in touch with him. Obviously, his grandfather's legendary. He's a man who's done more for sports and in a way for minorities. When he started, they were the first to really get people interested in. But Petey has a legacy of his own. His greatness, transfers over to his humanity, his family, and everything he's done. He's done first class. And I'll tell you what, if you'd have made a bet in 1972 or 73, whenever it was that Petey was in high school, that he'd go to New Mexico in college and stay there for his life, that would have been an odds-off bet in Las Vegas, because that was something strange in those days, and I wanted to give a shout out. So we'll give that done, and I'd like you to take me anywhere you want. Nothing special. Whatever you want to know, you think your audience would like to hear. I've been very fortunate my whole life since I was a child to work with some of the greatest athletes in the world and the greatest coaches. So you got it, Eric.
Well, I appreciate that, and I think a lot of our followers, viewers, would appreciate the Petey Gibson fans, because we got a lot of Petey Gibson fans that respect him as a human being, as an athlete, as someone who kind of lives on through this Lobo family. So I'll just jump right into it, Sonny. Let's talk about early inspiration. I kind of want to go in chronological order here with just your overall career, but what first sparked your interest within sports marketing? And was there a particular moment or event that kind of led you down this path?
Well, to start, how I got there is irrelevant. I was a pretty good athlete in Pennsylvania for football and baseball. I played basketball because there was only 53 kids in our thing, and half of them were boys, but I wasn't. But I found an avenue and a vehicle when I went to college, and I was injured and couldn't play any more football. They kept me on scholarship at Youngstown State University, which is, they're still arguing about that today. Way back then, that coach honored the scholarship. And I got involved with taking kids around to local basketball tournaments, high school kids around the area. It was very big after the high school season was over. And I'd pick kids on my own. I was only a few years older than them. I just love sports, and basketball was easy because it was in the summertime, and the kids weren't playing. I couldn't do it in football or baseball, obviously, but basketball there was, you can do. That's how I got involved, picking up kids at the homes, not knowing them personally. I had not started the Dapper Dan game yet. I was doing this as I was in college, helping kids go to Youngstown State. I was sort of a teenage assistant coach that got a scholarship. So that's how it started. But my biggest thing that started me on anything was the Roundball Classic, the first All-Star game in America, 17 years ahead of the McDonald's game. Petey played in an iconic game, and for years we sold out what was then the Civic Arena. The first year we ever played, they had 10,000 seats in the arena. We sold 10,334 seats. As they enlarged it, and they got it enlarged to 1977, the year when a lot of great ones played. Also, after Petey, we had 17, and one year we had 17,000 people in there. So the Roundball Classic was the first All Star game, and Petey made his reputation and his future because he was that talented, and the coach brought him down to New Mexico. But thousands of kids played in it. Many of them got scholarships, and a lot of them are playing in the Hall of Fame or made all this. And Petey made his life New Mexico. I want to say that. But so I start with the Dapper Dan when I was 24 years old. So you've got the next question, Eric.
Yeah, no, well, let's stay with the Dapper Dan Roundball Classic because you mentioned it was, yeah, pretty kind of a long time before the McDonald's All American game was even introduced. And if you want to mention just some of the names, some of the athletes, student athletes that played in that, and even some of the college coaches that you were able to establish
Well,
relationships with, kind
you
of
know,
progressed
if
you
I
through your
do
career as well.
if I do the kids, and I always feel bad about that, but there are so many in the Hall of Fame. I think the Trace McGrady's, the LeBron James, the Kobe Bryants. I can go on and on and on. And then before there was another game, and kids you don't remember yet have passed probably. Most of them went to the ABA and the NBA. It was the signature game. That's the only place you had an All Star game, and I never called it an All American game. It was just an All Star game that I handpicked for 45 years, I imagine. So there was nothing like the Dapper Dan Roundball Classic. That's a fact. Like I said, it took 13 years for LeBron or for the McDonald's to get another one. So we're in good shape with that. The Petey Gibsons of the world were the beneficiaries of it because I don't know what would have happened in either does Petey or thousands of other kids if there wasn't a show place. And really, the show place also gave. We had two teams. We had what was called the City League and the Catholic League playing the Western Pennsylvania side. So we got scholarships. I am proud of in basketball many things, but I started my life in basketball with the Dapper Dan in Pittsburgh.
That's awesome to hear. With the Dapper Dan Classic, you were introduced to plenty of college coaches that you became really familiar with, and some that you built long-term, lifelong relationships with. I mean, coaches like Jerry Tarkanian, UNLV, John Thompson, Georgetown, Jim Boeheim. The list goes on and on. Can you speak to those relationships and kind of where
Well,
the Dapper Dan Classic kind of led you
well,
with those ongoing relationships?
I can say this, okay? One year we had 160 college coaches in the stands for the Dapper Dan. So for the first 13 years, if you were a living college coach, I knew you. You know, I knew all the coaches. I mean, obviously John Thompson and the guys you read, I knew better. But there was a number, Jimmy Valvano. Then I leave out people, but I don't think in the early years there wasn't a coach that that really was involved in a sport that I didn't know. I think it's easier saying that. I think you and then since my life changed, basically what I do is give teenagers a chance. So I met these coaches like when Petey's year come and Kenny Durrett, another great player that out of his high school. Well, Maurice Lucas, they had 100 great. That's one of the great high schools in America. his high school, Shanley High School in Pittsburgh. But what I'm saying to you and your audience, I knew everybody, and everybody knew me. You know, I did it for all those years, and just bring up somebody, I leave out 100 other ones. So again, I don't say it to avoid a question. I say it to show you how big the Dapper Dan was and how wonderful my life has been.
It's great to hear. Now, with the relationships that you built with kids, I mean, you've seen a ton of games, seen a ton of really good basketball players, like beyond unbelievably good. One I want to bring up, Michael Jordan.
Well,
You have a really compelling story with how you, I guess, kind of came across Michael Jordan and really kind of influenced you to go after him in the Nike deal. Can you talk about that?
yes, but that's easy to speak of. Michael didn't play in the Dapper Dan. He wasn't the best high school player in North Carolina. That a lot of people don't want to, say that, but he was. There was a teammate of his was voted the player of the year in North Carolina. Michael wasn't. I didn't invite him because I usually looked at the first guy. I never really got to know a lot of the kids in years like that. I didn't travel the world looking at them. I saw once the more I moved, and by then I knew everybody because of the Dapper Dan. But I never saw him. The only time I ever saw him play in my life in person was the year that they played Georgetown in the NCAA's, and they beat Georgetown. At that time, the Hoyas and John Thompson were one of my favorite teams and kids teams. I got to know them personally, and obviously I knew John Thompson, until his death. There's no question about that. How close John and I were, and still are, as even though he's passed. But that opportunity and Michael Jordan was a once in a lifetime thing that I just you know I can't I can't overestimate the the oddness of me doing it. I never met him until I met him in Tony Roma's when a friend of mine, George Raveling, another coach that I knew very well, actually he was the best man at my wedding, introduced me because he was coaching the Olympic team with Bobby Knight that year, and it was in L.A. So these things, are so obvious that when I meet Michael, I get to know him. And getting to know him was getting to know him, but never spending personal time with him. So the easiest thing for you and the show here is Michael and I had a great relationship. I just bet my life on, or bet my job on getting him to sign at Nike. It was a long, hard journey of 4.5 months, but I just think the story has been told, and Michael, no one can ever overdo what Michael Jordan did for basketball and marketing.
No, I mean what you guys did really with that, the introduction of a brand new industry with shoe deals and picking the right athlete, and you having that special gift that you allude to a lot in a lot of your stories and interviews, which
Yeah.
I find really compelling. But what
Go ahead.
is
Go
kind of a
ahead.
broad question? But what is your recollection of signing Michael Jordan and him and his family, particularly his mom, making the decision to go with Nike and not Adidas?
Well, first of all, it was very, very familiar. And Mrs. Jordan, as time went on, was calling the shots. And Michael loved his parents. There's no question about it. And they were going to make it. Uh, What you saw in the movie was true to the fact that Adidas and Converse, you know, didn't believe enough in him to bet their whole bankroll. Now, just again to say it, they were obviously had great players, and Nike didn't have great players. What I did for Nike at the time was tell them that this is your one chance, and it was a hard journey because we didn't have the kind of money. But Michael's journey and my journey became personal because we were friends in the sense of the family. I know when the movie was shown, Mrs. Jordan actually called Viola up and told her to say hello to Pam and Sonny. So we are still friends. I don't see them anymore for a lot of reasons, but that has nothing to do with not liking them, So they're a part of our family, this living family, you know, that I got to know. And another one, just to give an example, Kobe Bryant's father. I knew Kobe, and he just passed. Joe Bryant just passed. and he was a dear friend. I just, was in contact with him 2 weeks before he passed, and so I get to know the fathers. I get to know the families. That's part of who my wife and I are. We don't just know the kids because the kids go on to pros and they get up and then they have family, right? Well, that's what happened to Joe. He had family. He was Kobe. All these situations evolved in my life because of the game of basketball, because of 16, 17, 18-year-old kids who love basketball.
What do you remember most about Kobe when you saw him for the first time? Because the story goes that you had told, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it was his dad, Joe Bryant, that had come to you and basically asked a favor for his son, Kobe, the family that had been living in Italy, to be allowed to play in your ABCD camp, which was basically an evolution of the Dapper Dan Classic. Can you talk about that and your
Yeah,
first time seeing Kobe?
that that's a good story. Joe did bring him. I just knew he. I didn't even know he had a son. I didn't know they were in Italy until he got home to America, and I heard stories about him. But in Philadelphia, but he wasn't a name. He wasn't like somebody that they were talking about all the time. He was living in Philadelphia with his dad. But what you didn't say was Joe Bryant was the most valuable player in the 1972 Roundball Classic. He played in the Roundball Classic, Joe. And and then Kobe's mother's brother, you know, played in the Roundball Classic in 1973. So the families actually brought their son back to me because by then, obviously, they weren't married at that time. They were still students in the high school, but that's the story. I I would have put Kobe in if you know if you were his son because because of Joe. My game, I never said that. I always gave kids a chance, and Joe said he was good, and I know just by being around individuals, especially in our sport of basketball, even though they're fathers or uncles or coaches, basketball is a sport you know more of than you do football, baseball, tennis, golf. You don't know, but basketball players are familiar because they play so close to the fans. You see who they are as high school kids, and the Dapper Dan changed that. And every state tournament had it was the same thing. You win the state tournament. You win the state tournament. We have legendary films about the Indiana high school team and the coaches and the players. High school basketball started basketball. It wasn't college. I mean, hell, they were televising, 2 weeks after the finals. I'm being facetious. No, the NBA finals in the '80s. You know that, and I know that. So that's what I had when I had Kobe. I had Joe and Pam's son, and he was going to play in my game or my camp. You know, if he was better than me or I was better than him. So that's what I'm saying. The Dapper Dan was that kind of a game, and my wife and I treated the kid. Obviously, we knew. And again, go back to Tracy McGrady. His coach kicked him off the team, told us not to take him. He's one of the most interesting stories in the world because he never would have got a chance unless he was invited to ABCD. And he said that.
Sticking with Kobe and even leading to Tracy McGrady's deal, fast forward, you're no longer with Nike at this time. You're with Adidas, and you're making a push to sign Kobe, who he initially signed with Adidas out of high school. He got a shoe deal. Talk about that experience and negotiating and really ultimately landing Kobe. How big was that at the time for Adidas, who was going head to head with Nike for it?
Well, he was my Michael of the 1990s. There was no question. Pam and I moved to New York for 6 months. A friend of ours and a guy that worked with me closely, Gary Charles, had a lot of AAU teams, and Leonard will remember who he is. Um, I contact when Joe brought him over. I never knew Joe Kobe was that good. I didn't. That was the first time I saw Joe and Pam since 1972. Also, so we understand that, and and then it happens with me like that. So my job was to find the next Michael, which was impossible, but I did in a different era and a different time. And I'll never remember calling Peter Moore, who was the president of Adidas at that time, and then telling him I found the next Michael, and that was Kobe Bryant. So that was my next chore.
God, landing Michael Jordan and then landing Kobe, that's that's lightning striking twice, right? It's pretty amazing. I want to stick with the amateurism that college sports once was that no longer is, kind of the shift of the landscape now with NIL and the NCAA in court like every other week because they're being sued for antitrust laws. Now, you were also very influential in like the 2015, 2014 era with a gentleman who a lot of people know, recognize, Ed O'Bannon, and pretty much opened the door for these antitrust cases to keep pushing forward, which introduced NIL. Can you speak to that Ed O'Bannon case and the advocacy that you kind of represent around that?
Well, I had an advocacy for wellness for a long time, and Petey can attest to that. There was just something about my upbringing, my whatever. I believe that everyone should have a chance, not like some people may, pretend. The kids are the game. The kids are the workers. The kids earn money for the other people, whether they're corporate or whether they're coaches. The kids did everything, and and it dawned on me. And my wife, you know, asked me one day when I was watching a replay of, that their EA Sports thing, and they were sponsoring, all these things on ESPN, the games, not EA Sports, but ESPN, the greatest games of all time. And I used to watch it. And Pammy walked into me one day and said, "Do these kids get residuals?" And she used to be a commercial actress, and it never dawned on me. And I said, "No, I don't believe in all that. I just thought they signed a contract or thing." I never thought about it, to be honest. My wife told me that day, but I knew there was offenses. I knew that there were a lot of things should have been happening, and before that. But that's what woke me up, and that's what gave me its incentive to keep forward. And I believe that Brandon Jennings was the leader of the pack of making a stand against the NCAA when he chose to go to Europe and play a year in Europe, and really not play, but worked his butt off and learned how to play basketball. And then he got drafted in the lottery, the next year. So my advocacy went to the players under all extremes. So when time went on and Pam and I said in 2000, when the heck it was, I was going to leave to Adidas or Under. No, I'm sorry. What that? The other shoe company. So New. Come on, help me with the others.
Asics, Asics,
I'm
no,
sorry.
Reebok.
Reebok. I'm sorry. Yes, Reebok. Okay. We were working for them, and I was starting, and I had signed Sean Livingston before his injury for the first guy. And then I said to her, that this is what we got to do. It was like 207 or whenever when I got out of it. I said, we're going to fight for these athletes, and we're going to do it on our dime. And that's how all that started. And finding O'Bannon took me a couple of years. I mean, I went around looking for lawyers. It took me 2 or 3 years to find people, great lawyers who would take this case. I obviously didn't have any money. I had an idea of what they could do and do a lawsuit. A great law firm got involved with it, took the case, and we had to find a plaintiff. And I went to a lot of the kids I knew, 15 of them, in fact, that were probably better known than Ed, although Ed O'Bannon was the player of the year. The team won the national championship. He was a great first, team All-American, all that stuff. So I wasn't like, picking a hat out of the cornfield here. I'm just saying, that's how it happened. And Eddie, when Pam and I flew to Las Vegas to spend time with him and his wife Rosa, we spent telling him about it. He did not make a rash decision. He went to other feet. He saw his picture on the EA Sports thing. That's what I was thinking of EA Sports,
In the video
and
games.
playing in that game. And basically, that's my buddy Ron there. Okay, whatever. So anyway, I'm saying to you, Eddie took it, and we had a great law firm, and we had great people. He represented them, And we did. We won. It took us 5 years, and we won. Now get back to the NCAA. It took 5 years, and I can tell you that Ken Feinberg was one of the lawyers that was involved with us, and Mr. Feinberg was a great man and a great lawyer who's made this conversation with many people over the years. Everybody knows Ken Feinberg. And so I want to tell you, we had good lawyers for Eddie, and that's what happened. We won in court, and we pushed the medal. We won the antitrust thing in the O'Bannon case, and people still don't understand why I keep saying this, but it's a fact. That's how it happened. Eddie was the strongest guy and the best plaintiff we could have ever had, even though it took a minute to get him. So that's what I'm trying to say. There was evolution. My wife supported these kids more than I do in all her ways. So that's what I'm trying to tell you, Eric. The
Now,
NCAA, the NCAA, there is no more NCAA, Eric. I should finish this off with this. There is no more NCAA. They will be a failure, and they're a failure because of their greed. They're wanting it for the money. They never thought of these athletes ever. Now they play. They played push the can down the street for about 4 or 5 years. That's what they did, and everybody listening to your podcast knows that. So I'm saying to you, the NCAA is obviously the guilty party here, and that's what it is. And I know we're getting close to my cutoff time, and I know if you have another question or so.
yeah, I have a few more. We are getting
Oh, I'm
close, so
sorry.
I'll
Go
try
ahead.
my best to wrap
Just
it
go
up.
ahead and go.
But sticking
I'm
with
sorry.
the no, you're okay. The NCAA and NIL and that whole changing landscape. What would your, I guess, recommendation or advice be for student athletes, college athletes now? I mean, with the tools and things that they have with social media. Some of these college athletes have agents now that are representing them within the transfer portal. They're negotiating deals to basically get paid to go play at some of the big schools around the country. What advice would you give a young 18, 19-year-old player in this day and age?
An honor. That's what it's like. I know where you're going, but I think all thinking the other way, they should have been having lawyers when they were 10 years old, 11 years old, or 12 years. The tennis players did. Everyone else did. You know, what I'm saying to you, Eric, is not something that even would be because New Mexico or New Mexico State don't have the resources maybe to compete, but they have the resources to recruit. You don't have to always get the greatest players. We've seen that in the last couple of years. But let's stay on your subject, okay? For 100 years, the NCAA lied. They said they were amateurs. None of the people who think that these kids are getting too much money or have too much strength now ever was mad at anybody when they were called amateurs. The NCAA called them amateurs. No one else did. No,
Mhm.
England called them when they made a segregated action to have amateurs in England in the 19. That's the truth. If you go back to history, there were always amateurs. How about the 1920s when and 30s when they were paying the players, the steel mills, they didn't even have to go to school. They just show up for games at that time. And then they penalized Jim Thorpe for playing in a baseball game or a hockey game or a tennis game, one of the greatest athletes ever to live. So I have no compassion for the NCAA. And I'm saying to me, when you talk about this guy's getting $1 million, that guy's getting $5 million, and the little lady who's now leading basketball and girls stuff. I mean, Caitlin has done a great job, but it took years for the
Mhm.
ladies to be able to do this, and it took
It
someone,
did.
So my answer to you and everybody in New Mexico, it's a fraud. It is open on basketball. It's nothing less than you want to think it is. The performer is being paid. He's going to go to
Yeah.
college. Now they're accepting the 1 year and out thing. All these years, oh, you got to get a college education. Got to get. Well, if you have a talent, none of these golfers did. None of these tennis players did. I remember all those tennis players because Adidas was really big, and we were fans of Steffi and a lot of them. Just watching the sports. I never played in my life, but I'm saying to you, I'm glad I'm getting a chance to talk in New Mexico tonight because I want New Mexico to listen. Don't have to believe me. You don't have. I'm just telling you why I did it. If I could have given money to the players in 1977, 78 when I paid the coaches, I would have. I even said that to Phil, but we weren't allowed because I wasn't allowed to give them for nothing. But I would have given it to, and I said that. That's people know that for 50 years. I'm proud I said that. So I gave it to the coaches. Then Norm and all my guys at New Mexico and New Hampshire and New England, and New America. They all wanted the contract, but I knew that the kids would get free shoes and free sweat shoes and free T-shirts. So that helped me a little bit by doing something for it, and also made a dynasty in Nike because I don't know if I ever meet Nike. Jordan never happens, and that's one of the reasons I met him.
Man, I love having this conversation with you. It's so insightful, and you have plenty of experiences. So I have one more question for you, and then I'll let you go. But again, I really appreciate your time and taking an evening away to chat with me because I love a lot of this stuff. But I have one of my really good friends, one of my best friends, David, is a Michigan fan, and a lot of us New Mexico fans have a tie with San Diego State. And you might know where I'm going with this,
Sure.
but Coach
Yes.
Steve Fisher, and his time prior to San Diego State, Michigan, and the Fab Five, who are highly recognizable and changed the game of basketball
Yeah.
with Nike, the shoes, the black socks, all of that. What is your recollection of that, and what was your relationship with Steve Fisher and Michigan?
Well, I knew every player on the team because every player went to camp and every player played in the Roundball Classic, I believe. Knew him personally. I knew Steve from when he was the assistant there. I remember when the situation happened and Bill had to leave and all that stuff. I'm very intimately close to Steve for over years. He used to come on the trips, he and his wife. I know the hardships he's gone through with his life. I'm a I'm a good friend. I'm not a fan of Steve. I'm a friend. And I just say that those were the pleasant parts of our life, relationships like we have with him. And those players, to me, in basketball, all the great teams, I'm not trying to talk about great teams, the great UCLA teams. I'm going to tell you from a business standpoint and my idea. UNLV Rebels, John Thompson, and Fab Five. Those three schools and the kids that played on those three teams at that time helped change basketball in Sonny Vaccaro's mind. In Sonny Vaccaro's mind, they did. They were able to sell shoes, sell merchandise, sell everything, sell out arenas, and boy, they were good. And boy, they were good, weren't they?
Yeah, three of the most memorable teams ever. Um, Sonny Vaccaro, sir, thank you for joining us. One last simple question. And this is coming from Leonard. Leonard wanted me to ask you before it ended, but who is one athlete that you never got a chance to work with, either living, present, alive, that you would like to work with, either in an endorsement deal, a shoe deal, sponsorship deal, anything like that? Who's one athlete that you never got a chance to work with that you would have liked to?
Bill Walton. Yeah, it surprised you, huh? He
That's a
was in.
good one. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. You know why? His coaches never told him he was invited to the Dapper Dan. That was in the first years. And then he played in some AU tournament. And through the years, even though he didn't play in my game, I'd see him. And obviously, he's one of the greatest players ever to play. We formed a relationship, and I knew of his son and all that. But Bill Walton was the one, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, I could have said, because he was Lou Alcindor, and his high school coach wouldn't send him. And Kareem, to this minute, has told me his high school coach never gave him, similar to Bill Walton. But the reason I say Bill as opposed to it being, Kareem, is I got to know Bill over the years. Even though Kareem coached the Dapper Dan one year, it was now the Magic Roundball Classic. So I got to know both of them, but I got to know Billy as life went on. We just saw him a couple of years ago at the All-Star game, and and Kareem, God bless him, he's still here, and and all that. But if I had to pick two, if you allowed me to, but one, I'd stick with Billy Walton.
Who's your second pick?
Kareem. Kareem
Oh,
Abdul-Jabbar,
Kareem. Oh,
the
gotcha.
Russian.
Okay, I missed that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's who it would have been.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your time, Sonny. I really appreciate this. Um, for everyone for watching, I hope you enjoyed it. Sonny Vaccaro, the grassroots Godfather, is what you're
Are
deemed
we
out in the
on?
media. There,
Are we on
I'm
live
sorry.
now, Eric?
We
Are
are,
we?
yes, sir.
Oh, please say hello to everyone down there that I met. But also, I hope Petey's listening. I hope he is, and if not, I'll probably talk to him in a week or so anyway. But thank you, and tell Leonard he owes me a favor. You know what the favor is? Invite me back on your program sometime in the fall or whenever basketball season starts.
Let's get you on. We'll get you on camera. Your wife said that you guys were moving
Well,
and
yeah. Well,
didn't have all
she
the
runs
setup, so
every.
we'll definitely have you on.
Well, you know Pam runs the whole thing. All right, go through her.
She does. Give her my special thanks too. I
I
appreciate it.
definitely will, and I
Everyone,
know how much she appreciates you being kind too. All right.
Mr. Sonny Vaccaro, thank you very much, sir.
God bless you. Bye bye.
Bye.
Let him cook. Let him cook now. Let him cook. I said let him cook.
Welcome back to the Pit Press Live. If you missed that, I can't follow it up. Eric, good job. That was Sonny Vaccaro. And we're joined by Rick. Eric, how did you, I know you kind of talked about how you got him on the show, but if you could go in depth a little bit about that. Because when you told me that, I was like, oh, Matt Damon.
Yeah, no,
That's who played him in the movie.
Pure luck and some really good friends. Leonard McMillan, who works with me at my normal day job. We like to have water cooler talk, and we became really good friends. Talked a lot of basketball. He shows up to a lot of Loto games. He has some relationships on the coaching staff there, and he's kind of been in the AAU circuit for Rick, like Harvey Hale and all those guys back in the day. He was involved in their AAU days back when, early 2000s, late 90s. But he's been around a long time, met a lot of people, and somehow crossed paths with Sonny. Became really good friends with him, and we just started talking. I introduced Leonard to the podcast, and somehow he made the recommendation and asked if he could come on. I was like, absolutely, man. Let's get him on. I was super stoked to get him on and have a conversation because he's beyond an icon, right? Like not only in the sports marketing industry, but in general. Like when you sign Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, you're in negotiations with LeBron James at Adidas. Now he had a direct impact in relationship with LeBron's high school team when they were sponsored by Adidas. I didn't have enough time to get into all these questions that I had for him, but he has his fingerprints all over everything, from the youth basketball games to AAU to the Dapper Dan Classic. We didn't talk too much about the ABCD camp, but you talk about all the future NBA prospects that came through that platform that he created. He's the founder and runner of all those programs, all at one point or another sponsored by Nike, sponsored by Adidas. And he has personal relationships with, at the time, were kids. But when you're talking about LeBron James, Tracy McGrady, Kobe, MJ, like the list goes on and on. He talked about Brandon Jennings, Chris Webber, like the Fab Five guys, like who we all grew up becoming fans of. It was Sonny had a relationship with them, and you could almost guarantee that he had a pair of Nikes on them, and they were calling him whenever they needed a favor. So really like to hear his opinion on everything tonight, especially with NIL and paying college athletes, because he's such a huge advocate for that in the community, starting with the Ed O'Bannon case in 2014 and 2015, I think it was, and now how it's evolved into this pay-for-play scheme, and the NCAA is basically crumbling, right? We've had Kurt Roth on talk about it too. So, man, what a time to be alive. It was such a cool interview. It was cool just to hear him talk. For some of our listeners that, or some of the viewers that are watching, if you haven't seen Sonny Vaccaro's 30 for 30 on ESPN, it's called Soul Man. Good stuff. Super good stuff. He's been on the Rich Eisen show. A lot of cool stories, really compelling stuff. And it's just crazy to me to think about how many relationships he's developed over the years. And man, that guy has lived a full life, and maybe even times 3. So what did you guys think? Rick?
Just totally incredible. I mean, he's a walking piece of basketball history, and to be able to have him on this show, it's really huge, man. And he's someone I've known about since we were in elementary school, knowing about the ABCD camp, seeing the orange shirts with the white writing on there, dreaming, of those things, and seeing players like Kobe, McGrady, among others, over the years that went through there, and just knowing the impact that he had on high schoolers, and then learning in your interview about he was someone that gave a second chance to McGrady, and we might not know about him if it wasn't for that. And just think about all these other impacts he's had on young men's lives, over the course of all these years. And still the way he speaks today, super sharp, and just a great interview, man. Hats off to you. And I'm going to re-listen to it tomorrow, because there was a lot of nuggets in there that I had never heard of before, as far as even the Kobe story about him getting a shot and him not knowing that if Kobe could even play. It was just really a favor to the family. So great job by you, and just a really awesome interview.
Thank you. Yeah, the Dapper Dan Classic is kind of a compelling story. Go ahead, Ryan. Go ahead.
No, I don't. We didn't say anything. We didn't even tell the guys on the show, because you had called me and told me that we were going to get him on the show before we went to Vegas. And I'm big on history, and I was like, I love the more of the history of, I think when it comes to sports in this country, what was going on. The first thing that popped in my mind is like somebody like, right before Montana took the field in Super Bowl 23, like he points and he goes like, "Oh, John Candy." Like if you watch the NFL films, he points at this lineman and he's like, "Hey, John Candy's at the end of the end zone." Like I love tidbits like stuff like that. And I forgot which lineman says it. And he goes, I looked down right before we started the drive, and he was like, "I'll be damned. There was John Candy eating a bag of popcorn in the corner of the end zone." Those are the history things I love. And I was like, this is all yours, man. But listening to him, and I didn't realize this. I saw the Soul Man documentary years ago when it came out on 30 for 30 and ESPN. I'm not a big ESPN guy, but I think that what they do with College Game Day and 30 for 30 is great. I thought it was really cool. I mean, you like the Tracy McGrady thing. I would have had I had no idea. That is I don't mean any disrespect. It's just not my cup of tea. I did see Air, um, and you know, that's I mean, that's insanity there. To have the impact that guy had when you think about it, on pop culture and marketing in this country. Um, it's pretty damn amazing. I thought that was a good get.
You you want to
Unfortunately,
yeah you
we're
want
going
to
up against something. Go ahead.
no, it's like you want to really have your mind blown. Google the Dapper Dan Roundball Classic or the ABCD camp and look at the alumni roster. You're gonna it's like wow. And this is all Sonny, right? Like he is actively this is before the days of internet and players, just the connection he has and being able to go and find the cream of the crop players to come play in this tournament, right? Like I think that tournament started in 76 and it started with a local Pittsburgh team, right? They were going to get a bunch of all-stars from Pennsylvania and they were going to play a US national all-star team and they were trying to come up with players from around the country that were the best of the best. And it slowly evolved into future NBA stars that wanted to become a part of this. He had coaches calling him. He had hundreds of college coaches sideline at these games trying to get Sonny to give him a sponsorship deal. They all wanted a contract with Nike because he was basically paying the coach and giving free shoes to the players to represent Nike. So all these college teams were on the floor wearing Nike shoes. And it just slowly and slowly became more of a popular thing with the kids wearing Nike shoes. And he developed really strong relationship with John Thompson at Georgetown, the same time that UNM was playing Patrick Ewing. Like it was those days when Georgetown was top 4 in the country, right? Like the Fab Five, that was his doing, fitting them out with Nikes. And he had college coaches at that time where a lot of these teams were into Converse, right? And they were just stuck on these Converse. But these coaches, and in that 30 for 30, Jim Boeheim is like, well, we have to pay for our shoes. So if you're telling me we get free shoes and I can make money, I can make more money with this contract deal than I will actually getting paid by the university to be the coach. Of course, I'm not going to say no. So then that's how we established these relationships with all these coaches and they got outfitted by Nike. Go back and watch the 30 for 30 and then go ahead and Google the list of the Dapper Dan Classic and the ABCD camps. It's pretty shocking.
Just the vision he had for Michael Jordan at that time. No, and like NBA players really had their own shoe in that way, right? I mean, there was the weapons by Magic and Larry, but the way that Nike had been marketed to that point was a tennis shoe, as I remember it. And this was, he told them to put their whole marketing budget in one person, and just how insane he must have sounded to Nike's marketing and sales board and CEO and CFO. But somehow he won them over. And I think they were only expecting like a couple $1 million in sales over the first year, and it was like well over $130 million in the first year. So I mean, and we know what it's still doing to this day. It's probably still the most recognizable shoe out there, and it keeps getting retroed in all these different colors, the same shoe that he was responsible for. So that legacy will just live on. And as far as some of the alumni you were mentioning in his camps, you know, Kevin Garnett, Jermaine O'Neal, Kwame Brown, Stephon Marbury, Tim Thomas, Felipe Lopez, Antonio McDyess, you know, the list goes on either when you go back, but OJ Mayo, Kevin Love. So you could name probably 5 NBA players and one of them would have been there. That's how many
Hall of Famers. Yeah, Hall of Famers.
Right. Ridiculous.
Well, I guess it would be our biggest get next to Jeff Pearlman. And we've had some pretty cool UNM related people on here, and I've had national reporters on here and around the Mountain West. But I think that's probably, even in my journalism career, I would say I was at a press conference with Candace Parker. I was just trying to think of big names that I've talked to in this career path, and but that might be the biggest. That was I don't know. It was very, very fascinating.
He was in the middle of moving, so they just bought a new house. I think they're out in California. Still have a bunch of plastic and protective coverings all over their furniture and stuff, so they didn't feel comfortable coming on camera or prepared. But he said that he'd be willing to come back on in the fall, this time on camera. So maybe we can get all you guys on, and you guys have your own set of questions. And really cool, really surreal moment for me. I'm a big fan of anything sports marketing related. It's kind of my background. I kind of nerd out some of that stuff. So Sonny Vaccaro is definitely one of the guys that kind of created that industry and is the Godfather, the grassroots Godfather.
I had forgot his name when you told me who he was, and usually I'm on point with that kind of stuff. So that was very cool. Rick, do you have anything left to say about that before we move on to topics?
No, just great job by Eric. And I can't wait to hopefully have him back. He really enjoyed it, so good job by you. If he wants to come back on, it sounds like his time is pretty precious. And if he wants to talk hoops with you, you must know what you're talking about too. So great job.
Yeah, it was cool that he was making a lot of comments about Petey Gibson too. So we're gonna have to. Ed's gonna have to get this over to Petey, and maybe we can connect them two somehow. That would be kind of cool.
There we go.
When we had Jeff Pearlman on, who wrote was a New York Times bestseller, who my favorite book, sports book, and it's second favorite. I don't think Jeff Pearlman's watching this, but anyway, I love Friday Night Lights, and if you've never read it, not the NBC, not Kyle Chandler, even though I love that, and even the movie wasn't really kind of that. The Billy Bob Thornton one that came out in 2004 with Connie Britton, that one really does. Connie Britton in that? Yeah, I think she is. That doesn't really kind of paint the picture of what that book's about. And when you start reading it, you're like, now this is not a political comment. You're starting to read it and you're like, holy shit, this town is racist as all hell. And that's what it's about. But they talk about Boobie Miles. It's just the dynamics. I love that book. But Jeff Pearlman, The Bad Guys Won. He's writing a book about Tupac and his life. That's kind of his like first branch out, non-sports related. He wrote Three Ring Circus on Kobe, Phil, and Shaq. He wrote a book about, which I bought and I need to read, even though I'm the New York Giants fan. It still fascinates me, about the Cowboy. I think it's called Boys Will Be Boys. He wrote a book called Sweetness. He wrote a book called Gunslinger on Brett Favre, which he actively said not to go buy because I guess he realizes that, or in his words, that Brett Favre was a piece of shit. But anyway, I'm listing all his books. He's a New York Times bestseller. He covered baseball for Sports Illustrated. He came on with Ed and I, and he stumped us at the end, and he stopped us. Jeff Pearlman, I know it's hearsay, but Jeff Pearlman stopped us at the end, and I thanked him again, and I was like, this guy's like never coming back on the show. And he was like, he said, Ryan, I do a lot of these. And he goes, this is the most fun I've had in a while. I really mean that. And he sent me an Instagram message back, like, thanks for having me on again. And I was like, holy shit. And I think Ed and I kind of came off across like bumbling idiots because we didn't, if Ed was on, I think he mentioned Billy Hickman. And I was like, I don't know who that is. And he played at Eastern New Mexico or Western New Mexico. But it was really cool to have him on. But I would say I'm sure Jeff Pearlman would be like, holy, you guys had Sonny Vaccaro on. That's pretty cool. I thought that was awesome. I never shy away from talking to anybody on this show. Journalistically, that's what I went to college. That's what I did. So I thought that was a good get. That's the best thing that I think we have done on this show. And, again, what we're going up, again, I'm not trying to be political, but what we're going up head to head against tonight, regardless of how you feel on the spectrum, it is. Yeah, Hulkamania. And a side note, I want to introduce, Eric's not aware of this, but we have a new political show on our network called Face the Zia with Lobo Gabe. So very excited to announce that Rick got it. All right. It was a bad joke. Like Face the Nation, Face the Zia, for all his political comments. But no, I thought it was a great get. John Pearl, yeah, Ronnie Chavez, yeah. John Perlman had that infamous interview with John Rocker where he said, I think the New York subway system was like a cesspool. Yeah, that was Jeff Perlman. And as a big Mets fan, and I think the Mets beat them that year to advance the World Series. I think or maybe it was 99, but Robin Ventura hit a walk-off grand slam in the NLCS and he didn't even round the bases. They just said the hell with it. So they ended up not winning the game by 4. They won the game by 1. But yeah, he had that epic interview with John Rocker. Switching gears here. Ed's not joining us tonight. Tad bit under the weather. But Ed and I were at Mountain West Conference Football Media Days as I do my radio voice there. Eric, if you need to go off, man, feel free to sign off. We'd really appreciate getting
I'm going to sign off. Got to put the little one to bed. But you guys tear it up. We'll talk to you guys soon. Bye, guys.
All right, Rick, thanks for joining us. You had, I guess we'll start with this. I'm
going to ask the questions to you, I guess. Oh, no, you're going to lead it off. No, go ahead. Lead it off with the newest
I will
news.
Start with this. Yeah, with the latest news. And we didn't even talk about Jeff Tedford, who was there at Media Days last Tuesday and Wednesday and stepped down for health reasons. But Blake Anderson from Utah State has been fired. He has ties to UNM, and I believe he was there with Bronco Mendenhall. I could be wrong, but he was a defensive coordinator, assistant coordinator. He was fired today. ESPN broke the news while we were talking to Sonny Vaccaro and while Hulk Hogan was giving his speech. According to ESPN and Adam Rittenberg, ESPN, eat your vitamins, brother. Utah State fired. This is according to ESPN. Adam Rittenberg. He's a senior writer. Utah State. And the only reason I'm reading this is because it kind of broke while I was producing the show. So I don't have all the information. So I don't want to bore our listeners. But Utah State fired football coach Blake Anderson on Thursday, 2 weeks after informing him of his intent to terminate him because of alleged actions in 2023 that the school says violated his contract and university policy. The school, which notified Anderson of its decision Thursday, cited, quote, significant violations, end quote, related to the reporting requirements for all Utah State employees. According to the school in a statement, quote, these reporting requirements include a prohibition on employees outside the USU office of equity from investigating issues of sexual misconduct, including domestic violence. Additionally, Anderson failed to manage the team in a manner that reflects USU's academic values. His attorney, Anderson's attorney, with a statement on X, Tom Mars, said, quote, all available legal remedies will be pursued against the school. Mars said the firing decision and Utah State's, quote, deliberately inflammatory news on July 2nd, which outlined the reasons for Anderson's expected dismissal, violated the terms of Anderson's contract. Anderson coached Utah State for the past 3 seasons, and in late 2021 agreed to a contract extension to the 2027 season after they caught fire and won the Mountain West Conference. Anderson just had a baby, and just signed a contract, lost his wife, and then had a baby with another woman. I didn't have the pleasure of meeting him last year at Conference Media Days. Former UNM head football coach Danny Gonzalez was really good friends with him. And after the media days, they tootled on down as a couple with his wife and his new girlfriend or wife to Cancun or Mexico or Cabo San Lucas. That's what these coaches do. Like, this is like their 2 weeks. Bronco Mendenhall mentioned it on the opening drive with Jeff Simieta and JJ Buck. He was in Montana saddling up his horses, save a horse, ride a cowboy. Then he was going back for a couple days just to get a couple extra days before he headed back down to Albuquerque and is going to begin camp, which I think for UNM is like next week. And next Wednesday is a month away from the kickoff week 0 home opener, season opener against Montana State. But that's the biggest news. Nate Drilling is his replacement. And Rick and I are 4 to 5 years older than the head coach of a Division I football team, which boggles my mind.
And I did hear him speaking at media days, Ryan, against the Mountain West panel there, and he sounded really good and confident. And he said the team asked him at this point in time, what is going to change? Do their expectations change? Does their plan change? And is in his mind, he was brought there to ramp up the defense, and that's still what he's going to do. And he's going to let the offense kind of be run by the coordinator, and he's going to lead the whole team. And he sounds like he's ready to do the job. But yeah, what a surprise to him, right? He's about our age, stepping into a head coaching job with only a few months ready to prepare. And they also asked him if, during the off season, when he's planning ahead in his own mind as being a head coach someday, if he's already planning out his game plan and thinking of what his philosophies would be. And he said yes, but when he got the call alerting him that he was going to be head coach, he was somewhere on vacation. So those game plans and philosophies kind of had to be sped up. And here he is now, having to lead this team with only maybe 6 weeks to go here, or is it less, before their first game? So that's going to be a very tall task for him, but he sounds like he can do the job from the way he was speaking. So good luck to Mr. How do you say it? Drilling.
He was the defensive coordinator, and we knew this. He was the defensive coordinator at New Mexico State last year. And some of these coaches that go to these media events, we were going to release. We did talk to Bronco Mendenhall. We did talk to Luke Wysong, Gabe Lopez. I keep wanting to call him Gabe Lucero, a friend of at least a friend of mine from St. Pius, who I also worked with. I see the Gabe and then the L, and I want to call him Gabe Lucero. Gabe Lopez is a defensive end. We have interviews with them. We didn't get as much time with Bronco Mendenhall as we wanted, because we're the ugly stepchild there at media days. But we're hoping to gather him later in the season. Bronco Mendenhall is kind of, he's very calculated in his questions. I'm stealing that from Ed. He's very calculated in his answers. He knows what he's doing. He was up for the challenge. I didn't realize he interviewed, or I did realize, I forgot that he had interviewed with Boise State, because I think Bronco Nation News had tweeted that out, that somebody from Montana, it was a quick flight on a private jet from Montana to Boise. But yeah, these coaches, like Timmy Chang was with his wife or girlfriend, and he just had a pullover on. I mean, he's from Hawaii, but Nate Drilling was like in a 3-piece suit, if I remember correctly. So he was there for business. So they open up over Labor Day weekend against Robert Morris, and then they go to USC, then they host Utah, and then they go to Temple, and then they play Boise State, and then host UNLV. That is a rough 6-game schedule. But Ed and I had the pleasure of talking to safety Ike Larson, who was preseason All Mountain West Conference, voted on that team, and we'll play that interview at some point. He probably might have been the most impressive guy. I mean, you got to kind of feel for these kids. I don't think they could transfer, and you have to find a reason to stick it out. But at least there's some positivity there. I know that doesn't really mean diddly squat, but he was on the preseason All Mountain West Conference team. So that's a tough situation. We're not in Logan. I know that Blake Anderson had said back in 2001 that wasn't a badge of honor. I was putting that on his mouth, words in his mouth, but that he had said that sexual misconduct or rape victims it was like something they glorified. I would have to find the comment, I think in the LA Times or the Salt Lake Trib. But he had said something like that, and he had to resign. Or he had to apologize. Excuse me. He didn't resign, but Yeah, it's all big news on
Well, the
Title IX,
unfortunate
so.
thing about this is what we see in the coaching carousel of both college and pro sports is even when someone commits these acts of negligence or not following school policies or even crimes at some cases, they still get second and third chances. So I'm sure he'll get another lower level assistant job somewhere, right, and get another job. But I hope he doesn't influence any more programs because what is being allegedly reported and obviously there must be some factual evidence to it if this is all happening of his negligence to report um, all of these things his players were doing is really sad, and it doesn't just seem like it was him. So I'm thinking the reason his lawyer is going back at the school is they're using him as a scapegoat or a cover for what it seems is a much bigger culture at Utah State of misreporting these sexual acts that should not be done and should be reported properly.
I think the AD got fired. Somebody mentioned to me that at media days, but yeah, this goes back to December 14th, 2021. This is KSL TV out of Salt Lake City. The headline is players, quote, targets victims glamour sexual assault. So that's what he had said, glamorize. That was the word I couldn't think of. But anyway, yeah, that was that's big news coming out of Northern Utah today. Well, Rick, you were going to shoot. We're going to have our own edition of Crossfire here. You were going to shoot me off some questions.
Well, since you were the
about-
man on the scene there, I was wondering, you said you only had a few minutes with Coach, obviously, and I don't know, I think you got some time with the players, but did you learn anything new about Coach Mendenhall or the Lobos that we haven't already heard a bunch of times? Did you get anything from them, either in your interviews or listening to the others?
So and Ed mentions this, I was a big advocate of supporting local journalism, and then I just stopped buying the Albuquerque Journal because I'm friends with Sean Ryder. I know Jeff Grammer. I really appreciate what they do for the Journal. I'll be open about it. I don't buy it anymore because I purchased it and you can get, it was like all Wired stories in the month of June, and I don't want to pay for that. Anyway, doesn't mean I still go and not read their stuff online. It's just supporting the newspaper and paying for it. But Sean Ryder had written that Bronco Mendenhall had shown immense attention to detail already since he's been here. And I think in talking to Luke Wysong and Gabe Lopez, especially Luke Wysong, they have to, Rick, we were kind of scoffing at this, that they had to earn their jersey numbers, which is like, okay. So Luke Wysong had said that they had to earn their actual equipment to work out in. And when he said that, I was like, these kids are in college, they're getting paid. Like, come on, give them some gear. I hope Mike Matas is watching. But that kind of struck my chord. And then I thought about it, and to vastly change this culture at UNM football wise, maybe it's just it's a good thing that these players and the whole hashtag is earn not given, and I scoff at it because I'm like, okay. But that really definitely is a big culture change there, that you're not only earning your jersey number, when we don't know what else they're earning, but they had to earn out workout gear. So if you had new workout gear from 20, you had older workout gear and it's ripped or whatever, you have to earn it. And as I played NCAA football, which we will touch on, they like Luke Wysong's 15th. What's Devin Dampier? Is he 10? Those guys still have to earn their jersey numbers, but to earn all that gear and maybe a locker spot, I mean, that's insanity to me. I've never heard of that. And Rick, you played football. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but I thought when he first said that, I was like, that's insanity. But yeah, 13. I couldn't think of his number. 13. But to hear that, and again, what this program needs culturally to revamped, I'm kind of on board with it.
you could hear it in the interviews by both Song and Gabe. They both mentioned something along the lines with he's one of the most important people they've ever met in their life, and the impact he's already had in their life in just a few months. They spoke of him on a level that you don't hear a lot of guys at that age speak about people. And I think this leadership council that the team has formed, what they did is they have player voted leaders from each position group. So the wide receivers voted for a leader, the edge rushers voted for a leader, quarterbacks, running backs, each group, and so on. And those leaders are part of the leadership council, and they speak for the team. So it's really cool how this culture is being instituted, and we're learning about it slowly. And I think it is going to give these kids a mental toughness that maybe some other teams don't have, the way that they're going about their work and not taking it for granted. Because let me tell you, I do remember always seeing the Lobo football players walking around campus in their fly gear. Well, you know, they enjoy that gear, and now it has to be earned. And I think that's cool. It's a totally different look, and it sounds like the players are appreciating that and buying into it from the way these guys spoke.
The most important thing to me is, are they buying into it? And for guys like Luke Wysong and Gabe Lopez, who came from Pac-12, who came from a bigger conference at the time, it's I don't know. It really, you know, buying into it is one thing. The result is another thing. And I always say that on here, you know, I'm from Missouri. You got to show me. I'm from the show me state. And not to go sidetracked, when we got to Vegas, somebody had texted me. I forgot who, or sent me. Maybe it was you, Rick. Somebody sent me, and it was Sean Ryder who tweeted out. But somebody asked me, they were like, have you seen the spread on the Montana State game? And I thought, UNM by 1, UNM by 2. And it was Montana State by 4.5. And I understand there, you know, when we were in the cabana last week and we had commenters, you know, again, I understand the seeing into fruition, the seeing and the believing into it actually coming to reality. But that doesn't, you know, I can think about having more money, but it just doesn't appear like that. And then I think FanDuel had Montana State as 7 or 7.5 point favorites. That is the state where the program is, where you are a home dog to an FCS program. Vegas, that's how Vegas sees you. Vegas isn't always right, but how was Vegas built? That kind of blew my mind. I will say that blew my mind. And if I were a gambling man, which I am, and for those of the regulars, the usual suspects that listen to us, you know where my stance is. And maybe I'm a little more jaded towards UNM because of my history with a certain media contact in there and Mike Loxley. Give me $120, you know, give me minus 110 for UNM to cover. I would take it right now. I just don't, I can't fathom, for as good as Montana State is, and hopefully we can have somebody on from Montana State prior, whether it be a football player or coach or somebody who covers that team prior to that game in about a month. Just right now, you can't, a Bronco Mendenhall led team, you just can't tell me they're not going to beat them. Rick, I don't know, when you saw that they were underdogs, I don't know what your thought process was.
I'm not really that surprised, Ryan, honestly, because like people have been saying, Montana State is an up-and-coming team, and I see them much like that JMU team from last year. That's a borderline team that could make the jump into D1 football if they decide to seek that route. And I forget the quarterback's name at this moment, but they have a quarterback that runs the read option. He's going to keep the defensive UNM guessing. He's able to hold the ball, freeze the secondary, and he can also throw. I believe he has 2 or 3 years experience. It's going to be a tall task for the Lobos. I expect a close game. And I really, even Coach Mendenhall said it multiple times throughout the media thing, there's a lot of unexpected things, and he doesn't even know at this point what to expect in some aspects. So I don't think anyone should just walk in thinking that the Lobos are going to cover this, because what we saw at the end of last year was a defense that couldn't stop anything, and we don't really know what's coming back this year. So I would expect a close game, maybe a field goal, if anything. But I mean, it is kind of unexpected also because of the level of opponent being a Division I school. I don't think you would see that line from any other D1 programs going up against a school like Montana State. So it is unexpected in that realm.
So his name is, I'm going to gather, no, it's not Sean Chambers. He was there last year. Yeah, okay. Montana State University's Bobcats football team has two quarterbacks, Tommy Millett and Sean Chambers, who are expected to share duties. Sean Chambers is a transfer from Wyoming, I'm gathering. I hope this isn't returns as MCSU quarterback, Sean Chambers. So they're going to have two quarterbacks, I'm gathering. I hope this isn't old news. No, that's old news. We're not going to roll with that. But
I think they're just going to have the one quarterback that is a running style quarterback. He has the ability to break it.
I'm going to have to do more research on that. I sound like your uncle at Thanksgiving. I'm going to do more internet research. But
one other thing before we move away from media day stuff is, what was there a favorite interview you had, or a biggest surprise that you had in your coverage?
It was Ike Larson from Utah State. I talked to a ton of people last year because I kind of mooched off Jeff Simieta and JJ Buck. This year, I don't know, it was a little hard. Ike Larson from Utah State was probably the coolest. He, couldn't comment much on the situation, but somebody's got to be a team leader, and he was cool. I remember watching Timmy Chang at Hawaii as the quarterback there, and I thought that was awesome. I've had the pleasure of talking to him 2 years in a row, and he made a joke last year about how he cut off his hair, and he used to have his power was in his hair like Samson. The two UNLV guys, the best moment though was, again, we're not Fox Sports. I'm not Ross Tucker. I'm not Petros Papadakis from Fox Sports, who, if you're familiar with LA, he does a show, Petros and Money. Money Matt Smith went to Pepperdine, got a degree in finance, and now is a talk show host in LA. You're probably familiar, Rick. Yeah. And then he does some stuff on NFL Network. But you have those guys running around who are covering the games and the teams. But the UNLV SID information, sports information director of media contact, walked over to me. I was talking to somebody, and he was like, "Hey, do you guys want Barry Odom?" And I was like, "Sure." Does he have time? And he goes, "Yeah, he has time. He's eating beef jerky," because Old Trapper beef jerky was the sponsor. And the Old Trapper was there with the coaches, and they had this nice setup. I took pictures of that. But he was like, "Yeah, coach is just eating jerky." And I was like, "Sure, we'll talk to him." The two, again, the coolest thing, again, to talk to somebody who's an All-American as much as I love college football, was Ricky White III, who's the UNLV wide receiver. He was second team All-American last year. And I had mentioned he was great to talk to, and it wasn't certain players like there's arrogance. There wasn't arrogance from him. There was just a level of confidence in UNLV, or what UNLV football is and how far they've come. They played for the title last year in the conference, and they are picked to finish second behind Boise State. So could we get a rematch? I don't know much about the quarterback situation there. Their quarterback from last year, whose name I can never pronounce, transferred to USC. I was informed that he couldn't read a defense, and teams caught on to that. So I guess he'll go play for Lincoln Riley at USC. But Ricky White was cool to talk to. Rick, you had sent me an article from Nevada Sportsnet about the 50 top most important players today in the Mountain West Conference. And as I was scrolling at it, number 4 was Jack Howell. Jack Howell is a safety for Colorado State. His dad won a Super Bowl with the Buccaneers. That infamous defense, not obviously the Brady run. He was pleasure to talk to. Got to talk to defensive back from Hawaii, Peter Manuma. He was great to talk to. I was hoping to talk to Braden Schrager, the quarterback there. Hawaii's supposed to be better this year. Braden Schrager was in Louisiana at the Manning Passing Academy and got on a plane and went to Vegas. So that was cool. That was super cool. I forget the guy's name, but got to talk to one of the representatives from the Arizona Bowl, which is now the Snoop Dogg Arizona Bowl, presented by Gin and Juice and Dre and Snoop, I think, or powered by Dre and Snoop. It starts with Snoop and ends with Snoop. He's funny to talk to. He's got a good sense of humor. I met a comic there who started his own podcast, hoping to get him on. But as far as the play, I mean, it's a networking thing. I love going, and it's what Circa, and if you've never been to Circa Hotel and Casino, what Circa and the Mountain West Conference have done to put on an event like that. It's phenomenal. I mean, to be there, I'm not, I jokingly call media members vultures because there's free food and they just run over and get it. For what I used to do and what we are trying to build here with this company and this show, I'm happy to be there, happy to have access. Again, I know I'm not Fox Sports or CBS Sports, but to be on that level playing field where we have access to the coaches and the teams, not only at UNM, but UNM that participates against in, athletic competition. It's very cool. I hope I answered that question, Rick.
Yeah, and you guys looked great. Both times you did shows, the cabana setup looked great, having the camera out on the pool. So I'm super jealous that I wasn't out there with you. So hope you guys had some fun also.
You say that now. It was hot as
Anything else from me? Any other takeaways that we should know about that you think are worth mentioning? I know we'll get to the interviews, but just anything else worth mentioning now?
Not to give a big old I think the biggest, two takeaways was asking these college kids if they opted in to be in the new. I keep calling it NCAA football. It's not that anymore. It's EA. I just realized that it's EA College Football 25. They did away with NCAA.
Another slip up by the NCAA. They can't even get their name on their own game.
Yeah. And you heard Sonny Vaccaro if you listened to it earlier. The kids opting in, and I asked the linebacker that you get two representatives players from each team and then the coach. Ricky White III was the representative from UNLV, and then linebacker Jackson Woodard, who transferred from UNLV. 6'3", 225. I mean, built like a tank. He's at Mountain West Defensive Player of the Year voted, along with Ahmad Hassanein. I'm going to butcher his last name. He's from Boise State. He was a pleasure to talk to. We talked to him. He's Egyptian and has only played football since 2019. But asking these players if they had opted in, Jackson Woodard, the linebacker from UNLV, gave a great response. He was like, "I'm in the game." And right when he said that, I caught that, and I know Ed didn't. And no offense to Ed, because EA Sports is in the game, and I thought, man, that was a great response. And if EA heard that, that asking them and asking Gabe Lopez, he was like, it was like you could kind of see he's like, I don't care if I'm on UNM, I'm in a video game. And Luke Wysong said the same thing. I am in a video game. Ike Larson from Hawaii said that. He was like, I'm in a video game, man. It's super, super cool. That's forever. And you play it, to see Devin Dampier and Gabe Lopez and Luke Wysong in the game. It's very cool to see these players that I just met with their actual name, image, and likeness in the game. It was super cool. One of the last takeaways, and it wasn't even kind of football related, was I met a comedian by the name of Colby Dant, who started a network called what was it called here? SPGN, Sports Gambling Podcast. And we just started talking, and he was like, I dropped out of East Carolina University, moved to LA, and I became a stand-up comic. And I was talking to him, and I had him laughing. So therefore, I'm very happy that I made a stand-up comedic laugh. And we started talking, and he was like, anytime, we talk UNM, I'd love to have you on. And Rick, I'd love for you to meet him because I think you would think he's funny. And we started talking, and speaking of NCAA football, I brought up my experience with Mike Loxley and my EA Sports game, EA experience. It's like Mike Vick the Riot. They should make an experience for me playing that video game. But anyway, he was super cool to meet. And so just the networking there, it was awesome. But I know I'm repeating myself, but the way Mountain West has it set up with being at Circa, and Circa's fantastic. They're not a sponsor. It's just super, super cool that it's set up there and that we were able to go live from the cabana. We were going to go live 2 nights from Stadium Swim, the pool area with, the 160 feet, 5 feet, whatever. But it was a little too hot for Ed and I. I stood up when we were done with the show and it was swamp ass city and I could just peel my shirt off the back. It was 189 degree heat to 117 degree heat is a major difference. But it's just a cool experience. We're waiting to hear on where basketball media days are. Hope sometime in the middle of October, like 2-3 weeks out from the start of the college basketball season. Last year, the Mountain West Conference did it with the West Coast Conference. We're hoping to be there, and we're hoping to have Jacob, Rick, Eric. We're hoping to go with 4 or 5 guys, and we're hoping to blow that out of the water on Thursday with the men, and hopefully talk to some of the women there on Wednesday. But it's just, it's just a super, I don't know. It's a cool experience. I've taken off the journalism hat as owning on this business, and networking, I guess, per se, as I lose my train of thought there, as I always do now. Ronnie Chavez. Ryan, were you able to check out maybe the Big 12 or Pac-2 media days? And if so, how did the Mountain West media day compare to those 2 others that were going on in Vegas? So the Pac-12 did an event at the Bellagio. I probably could have applied to a credential and got that because I guess it was open, but it was called an evening with Beeves and Cougs, and it was at the Bellagio. It looked pretty cool. They just had they had the beaver and the cougar just like set up as if they were going out on a night in Vegas. I wanted to go to that. I know the Big 12, I did not apply for a credential. We don't cover that conference. It would be very hard for a podcast to get credentialed for that. I'm sure I probably could have, given that U of A does play UNM. Jacob and I would like to talk a lot more betting lines when it comes to college football. They were set up at Allegiant Stadium. I don't know what that's like. They had podiums, and this year I would have loved to have been there for Mike Gundy's word vomit. Rick, but I would take, and again, for the usual suspects that listen, I know, I'm glass half empty kind of guy. I would take doing the Mountain West media days over being at Allegiant Stadium any day of the week. Now, if I were to go to the Big 12 media days, at Allegiant Stadium, maybe my opinion would change. But that would be something, if we cover more college football and if we get credentialed for that I would absolutely love to do. So that's my ramble there, Rick. I wish you would have been able to join us last week because I think you would have really enjoyed it. But if you go to basketball, man, it's the day with the men and what, the national media there, especially with what transpired this season with the 6 teams getting into the NCAA tournament. It was pretty cool, but I'll shut up now.
Well, you guys did a great job. I'm proud of the work you did, and it's cool to see our name out there and Circa putting up a spot for you guys. That's great work. And I guess I just wanted to mention a few other takeaways that I kind of gathered from the Lobo players, of especially the defensive guys to watch out for that are going to be impact players. Is Tavian Combs at safety is going to be a big part of what they're doing, and a leader in the secondary. And also Noah Avenger, the transfer from San Diego State, was at one time a preseason All Mountain West selection. So I think the secondary does have some guys back there, and it won't be as weak. And it sounds like from what Coach Mendenhall has said, he's met the needs of where they really needed players, not only just because of the numbers, but also because these guys fit into the program. So looking forward, I'm just hoping that the secondary irons itself out, and it sounds like they have a stable of 17 linemen now that they can choose 5 out of to start. So I would hope that 5 out of the 17 are at least at a level that we would expect. So I think, the roster has filled out nicely from what I've gathered in these past interviews with Bronco, both on the radio and then at media days. But I did just find it interesting that it got brought up again that he did apply for the Boise State job, because he said one of the biggest reasons he took the UNM job, he and his wife, he calls them, they're a team, why they took the job was because of the challenge. And if there was a turnaround factor, well, I don't exactly see that at Boise if you were going to take that job. Those are like 2 night and day jobs, taking that job versus UNM. So it's kind of interesting to see that once he didn't get that job, that he progressed to a place where he wanted more of a challenge. So those are just my main takeaways from listening to some of the content, and I'm sure I'll get more once I listen to your guys' interviews.
What I will say, you cannot blame the guy for applying at Boise State. Like that's, it's one of those things where you cannot blame the man for that. And he told us that, and when we released our interview with him, he had mentioned, I straight up asked him, why did you come to UNM? And he was like, I wanted the challenge. I am still kind of dying on this hill that I think they should have given Danny Gonzalez another year. However, you cannot be first in the nation in penalties at all. I mean, that cost them, again, they might have been a 6-win team last year. Those penalties cost them big time, and the defense cost them big time. I think one of the biggest takeaways is he got a couple guys to, when they entered the portal, they came back to UNM, and Tavian Combs was one of them. At least he's familiar here with that. I think that's exciting that he got him back. We had the pleasure of talking to him last year, but I think that there is a lot of unknown, and I think I will give Bronco Mendenhall, for as critical as I've been, because he doesn't talk to the media, and this is what we do and what I've done. You get paid millions of dollars. You can give us 15 minutes of your time. I think I give him respect because he walked. I'm thinking about Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park. It's one big pile of shit. I think he has walked into a lot of unknown, and he doesn't know. And it might be because I'm here, because I see it. And again, I didn't play the game, Rick. I don't know I'm not a 2-time offensive state lineman like you are, but for San Juan Mendoza, but I don't know if he is able to turn this thing around by 2026. It would, I mean, that.
Well, here's the
kudos to him.
question. What does turnaround mean to you? To me, it means, can New Mexico even get to the level of a Colorado State within that time period? Can they even do that? Do you think that would be a success if they get to the middle of the pack within the maybe top third within the next 3 seasons?
I would say massive turnaround is, you are a game, where this program's come from, you are a game away from maybe playing for a Mountain West Conference title. Look at New Mexico State. I mean, they went on the road and they punched Liberty in the mouth. I know they lost the game, but they punched them in the mouth. So it's been done in this state. I would say turnaround is at least trying to compete for a Mountain West Conference title, because the hell with the bowl games. I think maybe this year or next year, getting to a bowl game, that's the start that is there. You heard Kurt Roth, 505 Sports Venture Foundation president, living, I'm walking here guy, from Urban Cowboy, not Urban Cowboy, but that's the movie with the Dustin Hoffman and John Voight, but where he goes, he hits the cab and I'm walking here. I love Kurt. I mean, it blew my mind that he said he thinks they're going to win 5 or 6 games. I mean, if that was the Chappelle Show where my head blew up, I mean, I would have never, talking to him last year from this year, I would have never expected that guy to say that. Now, when Kurt talks basketball, I mean, I listen to Kurt whenever he's talking, but like my radar went off. You know, if he's telling me, yeah, this is a Sweet 16 basketball team, I'd be like, okay, I can buy that. I mean, I wish I had that soundbite. The what? Like that's what I did. That blew my mind. I think I do think that it's one of the hardest jobs in the country. I do. I really do, for Division I that's been in a staple where it's been the last 5 or 6 years. And I'm repeating myself here, Rick, and rambling. I absolutely love Danny Gonzalez. He was super cool with us, and I know that's a bias, but I wanted to see him succeed again. From here, alma mater, UNM. Sometimes I think going to your alma mater just doesn't work out. I mean, I think that's kind of the reason why Dabo Swinney didn't go to Alabama, why Steve Alford didn't go to Indiana, even though Mike Woodson's there. He's gotten to the round of 32. Things have not worked out well for him there. I'm going to throw that back at you. What's a turnaround what does that definition mean to you?
My standards, I think, are a little lower based on where they've been. The short history here, past 7-6 years. So to me, this season is kind of a wash. I'm just looking for a more disciplined team that doesn't get a ton of penalties, is able to make some stops and hang in to these games against these tougher opponents and not just lay down. So if they can just stop the turnovers and penalties and show some sort of progress this season, that'll be good. But looking over the next few seasons, I think success to me is getting to just a mid-conference level. I don't think they have to compete for the top of the conference within that time frame. It's about getting more back to relevancy and being able to recruit at a higher level than they have been the last few years. With this changing landscape, we don't know what that's going to look like, or even if UNM will be able to recruit the type of players they have been getting. But to me, I would say within the 3-year span, just reaching a bowl game for me would be a success at this point after what we've seen the past few years. I don't think a conference championship, I mean, that should be aimed for, but I don't think it's realistic in that type of time.
No, I hear with you saying that. My question to you is, if you had, and I love college football through and through, I'm all about history. But if you were like a 3-4 star recruit, Rick, and UNLV came a calling, and you know that maybe you could compete for Mountain West Conference, that would get you in the playoff. I mean, that's what these guys were talking about, that UNLV could probably, if you look at their schedule, and if they are as good as they are last year, there's a real possibility that team is, and I know I'm going to get a lot of grief for this, flirting with a 12-0 record. Maybe winning a conference title. 11-1 might get them into the conference title. I think Boise's this is college football playoff. I think 11-1 might get you in. I don't know that for sure. I would imagine a Mountain West Conference team would have to run the table. But I'm asking this to you, Rick. If you were a 4 or 5 star recruit, and Barry Odom came calling from UNLV, was that something? And you had other offers. You're playing in Las Vegas. They don't have an NIL program. They're figuring it out now. I didn't know that. They're working on it. But with the amount of money in that town, Allegiant Stadium, new facilities, I mean, probably gear at your disposal, uniforms at your disposal. I think there's I don't want to say a UNLV football renaissance, but a resurgence of it, and them having a place at the table. I'm going to be honest, I'd go play there. I don't know how you feel.
Yeah, I mean, it's an attractive place right now. If you're a player that's looking to go on an up and coming team that's actually going to be success, or if you're just looking for playing time, you might not get it there if you're a freshman coming in and you're looking to play. So I think it depends on what each young man is looking for. But man, playing in Vegas in that stadium with a team that looks like it's going to do big things this year, I would be excited regardless if you're incoming or coming from last year, because like you said, it looks like they have a good shot at winning double-digit games this season, and it'll be exciting to see. Do they play Boise during the regular season? Can we look that up?
They play Boise, I believe, in Vegas, and I was looking at their schedule. Yeah, October 25th at 8:30, Boise State plays UNLV in Allegiant Stadium. That's probably the game of the year in the conference. And I have Jimmy H. UNM doesn't play UNM this year. Just throwing that out there. Yeah, that's the game I've got marked in the conference. Air Force is always, I love watching Air Force. I love watching Army, Navy, and Air Force. I do. Watching them play each other, and talking to my mom, who was a big college fan. I was like, oh, yeah, I know you're going to want to go see Air Force. So when they come to UNM, but yeah, UNLV hosts Boise State on October 25th. So that's probably the game of Fresno State goes to Houston. And the word around media days was they have the confidence to go in Houston and beat them, who was on the bottom end, I think, of the Big 12. I think Dana Holgerson got fired last year. They go to UNLV. They play an FCS team. Then they go to Kansas. They will play KU at Arrowhead because Kansas is redoing that stadium. I think it'll be done next year. So all KU home games are in Kansas City. And if you're at Arrowhead, and if you're not familiar with that area, Lawrence is not that far from the Kansas City metropolitan area. Neither is Manhattan, Kansas. Then they go back and host Fresno State. Then they get Syracuse. And the belief that I got in talking to a few people around Vegas close to the team is that the only game that they're worried about is KU. And KU just beat them in a bowl. I forgot which bowl game. They just beat them this season. So I'm kind of high on UNLV. I'll probably, eat shit later, as we talk 3 or 4 months down the road. I'm not, Spencer Danielson is the new head coach at Boise State. He replaced Andy Avalos. I was there for that. He got fired after covering the spread, but I think a lot of boosters were not happy with Andy Avalos. He was an alumni. The thing with Spencer Danielson, and dude, he's 35. I mean, I talked to him for a split second. Ed and I listened to him at the podium when he was available to print and meet and TV people. I mean, he didn't look like he had a deer in headlights. It was, I'm 35. I'm like, God, yeah, damn it, I'm older than this guy. But there was a confidence, and he was talking a lot. And I think he's realized that's one of the premier that's one of the premier coaching jobs in the country. But he was like, yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to tackle this. But that is, when I went up there, they eat, breathe, live shit Boise State football. I mean, that's what it's all about up there. I was up there for UNM when they were 28.5 point underdogs, or 27.5 point underdogs. And it was, are they going to fire Andy Avalos? And they beat UNM, and they fired him the next morning. And Spencer Danielson got the job and led them to a Mountain West Conference title. So it's just a different world there. Ned and I were talking about it, and it's a different conversation, for another time. But that is a program that has 3 Fiesta Bowl appearances and 3 Fiesta Bowl wins. That's my buddy Eddie that picked me up when I went up there. We got off the airport and we were driving, and I was like, I wanted to see downtown and the campus right away. And it was on the way to his place. And he literally said, when we were pulling up to Boise State, he was like, this is all Mike Peterson. Is it Mike Peterson? The head coach that got them, that won that Fiesta Bowl against Oklahoma State. And the campus is gorgeous. And he was like, this is all Mike Peterson. Mike Peterson paid for everything, and that's what football does. And Ed and I had this conversation in Vegas. I know how much UNM fans want this basketball team to succeed. And it's like, oh, Sweet 16. And that's kind of like the mediocrity we talk about. What winning bowl games like that can do for you, as opposed to just getting to the Sweet 16. That's your point. That my buddy Eddie was like, that campus didn't look like that 20 years ago. So that's my rant.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you, and that's probably why UNM is possibly looking on the outside of any new conference alignment that they have with the Pac-12 schools. So it'll be interesting to see if the strength of all the other sports programs at UNM is enough when that time comes.
No, that's the most interesting part. It really is, because UNM could get left behind. Rick, I don't know how much time you have left, but the biggest news this week was the return of EA College Football 2025. And I wanted your thoughts on it. And I was just happy to play with a college team.
I have some trivia for you and for our listeners. I have another old copy of a game here. Sorry.
Oh,
If
no, I see
anyone
it.
can tell who this quarterback of the Oregon Ducks was in 2003. This is how long
I know the
Tamari and I
answer.
have been waiting for this game. You see the year on this. Over 20 years we've been waiting, and it has not disappointed yet. I've been keeping a lot of late nights playing as the Lobos coach. Lobos have a new coach under my tenure in college football. His name is Tom Lobo. He's 5'5", 300-pound coach, and he does not play around. So far, we've started off hot against the Division II school. They don't have Montana State, so I played a school called the Sharks. And what I've gained so far. Go ahead.
No, because I started a dynasty with Tennessee because I want to win every conference. That's how nerdy I've been waiting, because you used to be able to win trophies on it. But I started a season with Tennessee, and the first game was against FCS Southeast, and they were the Pandas.
Right. So what I've actually gained about this New Mexico Lobo team from the video game so far is that Devin Dampier is going to be a weapon. He's very fast, can get out of the pocket, but he's going to need it because it looks like the O-line is not hold up very well against the pass rush. In my game against Arizona, the second game, it was a little bit tougher. But the top players in college football video game for the Lobos: running back Andrew Henry, 81 overall; right guard Isaiah Silliman, 80 overall; Eli Sanders, running back, 80 overall; Tavian Combs, who we just spoke about, 79 overall; our local favorite speedster Luke Wysong, 79 overall. And please believe I have already thrown some bombs to Mr. Wysong, so I expect to see the same thing in real life. Devin Dampier rounds out at a 74, and wide receiver Caleb Medford is a 76. So some talent at the skill positions, and it shows in the game. Defense was a little bit more of a struggle, but that may be due to my coaching and not knowing what I'm doing yet. What have you gathered from the game so far, Ryan?
All right. I haven't gone to many comments, but I am tonight. What I've gathered, and I'm stealing this from Jim Rome, is because Madden has sucked major ass for the last 10 years or so. It's not fun to play. I literally ran this. I created a quarterback, and I played for the Raiders for some reason last year. And I had like over 3,000 yards to Devontae Adams. I threw for like 10,000 yards, and that was on all Madden, which is the hardest level. I'm just so happy to have this game back. The game looks great. It looks cool. The gameplay is it's okay. I'm giving it a pass because it's so much fun to play with the college team and these players and the NIL. The game looks great. You can do a sim, the fast sim or super sim. It freezes and I have to start the program. Like, I wanted to tweet at EA. But I am stealing this from Jim Rome, and I sent it to you, Rick, and our friend, his nickname's Me. We used to say it all the time. It's Tony Horton from Abrick or Ripper X. I hate the game, but I love it.
I hate it, but I love it.
I hate it, but I love it. It's true. We got to close that down. The game looks great. I love it. Throwing the ball is pretty hard. Running the ball is much easier. I just think the game looks absolutely fantastic. I will give it that. I think the presentation, everything looks great. And when you can select your favorite team, I selected Rutgers because, and it was like hashtag the birthplace of college football. Then I switched it to UNM, and it says hashtag we are NM. And then you can change it to other things. Like, they've got a lot of stuff down. The intros are cool. I mean, the stadiums look great. As far as the gameplay, it kind of is I think it's better than Madden, but I'm playing the shit out of it. I don't care. It's been 11 long years. And it's a game that got me 5 minutes of fame. I've not tried to talk about it as much, but as I read the comments, Jimmy H, I'm going at you. Video games mean little. Well, you should ask me or Mike Loxley. John Romero, please run a simulation model with NMSU. That is why we bought I was buying the game anyway. We plan on doing that. We plan on simulating the season. The only problem we've run into is Montana State's not in the game, and they're underdogs, as we've already mentioned. They play FCS who? Like, I don't know how we're gonna figure that out. I guess we'll just simulate it, or we start with Arizona. I don't know, Rick. I'm looking at you.
I think we'll simulate it and see how it goes. That'll represent Montana, but we'll definitely do the New Mexico State game and jump into the stats of what we uncover, and see how we'll follow up after the real games and see how close these simulations are to see if they truly are a waste of time or if they're sticking true. It'll be interesting, and I'm excited to take this ride.
Well, yeah, no, I'm along for the ride, and we will record the games and play them for you on here, and maybe run like a highlight as if it were on Sports Center. I plan on doing that. There's a guy that I follow on YouTube called Not the Expert. He's awesome. I recommend his channel. I think they made the FCS Pandas team in there for him because he created a team on NCAA 14 where he was like the something Pandas, but why not wait for the actual games? We are waiting for the games. We're going to simulate the week of, and I'm just
talking about my fake season with my revamped logos that I'm building on the side, but I won't confuse you anymore by talking about that. We're going to do the true simulations without my doctored rosters.
Ronnie Chavez, they don't have the new building on the south end zone of the University Stadium. No, they don't.
And they also had the full stadium full of fans, Ronnie, and that wasn't true either. So they're going to have to adjust the game if they want it truly realistic.
Yeah, it's it looks good. I mean, it looks like the stadium. They don't have it says the University of New Mexico, and it doesn't have like Urlacher and Mathis and Dontrell Moore. I was hoping for that. They've got a lot of detail in that game. That one they don't. On that one they do not. So I would imagine if 2K or EA were to make an NCAA basketball game, I can tell you right now, because I had it like 20 years ago. They had 4 arenas in the game, or they had like the more popular arenas in the game, and then they had like cookie cutters, and one of them was the Pit. So the Pit was actually in the game. So I would imagine that if somebody made a college basketball video game, I can guarantee you UNM would be highlighted pretty hard. I mean, look at this. If you saw the introduction for EA Sports, the trailer for it back in April or March, they started off with Boise's turf. I mean, I would put my money on it that if they made a game with college basketball again, the Pit would be featured pretty heavily, and we would be having a different conversation here in regards to the football. But I don't know. I'm happy it's back. It's a game I loved, and it's a game that made me national news. But it's Grand Theft Auto, Red Dead Redemption, one of the Call of Duty 2 that our friend Joe Tarango and Gil Goudelet used to play till like 6 a.m. in 2006, 2007 in my house. But NCAA, and when I'm saying that NCAA, EA NCAA football I had to have that game every year over Madden. I thought it was the best. And
are you going to say who this was?
This is Joey Harrington.
And who did he get drafted by?
The Detroit Lions.
There you go.
We should have given away a gift card for that. So something else we should have had that. Something else I wanted to introduce on our show. And before we do that, again, our mailbag. Hey, check us out. Shoot us an email email us at thepitpress@gmail.com. Jimmy H has already hit on my alcoholism here and making fun of me for that. So kudos to you at the Cabana. We're hoping to get more serious emails. So email us there at thepitpressnml@gmail.com. Don't need that anymore. So Rick, I'll start with you. I want to introduce a question of the day or question of the night. I was listening to a lot of I listened to Jim Rome, now I've been listening to Coach JB show. And if you don't know who he is, go to season 3 of The Last Chance U. I'm giving him free publicity because he's an insane human being, but I love listening to him for some reason. And so does Rick. Rick, have you started watching it yet or no?
I can only take about 3 minutes of Coach JB at a time. So a few minutes a day is all I need. And then I'm good to move on.
He sways one way politically, and I could not listen to him. But I listened to Jim Rome, and then I love a guy named JR Sports Brief, who's on. It's no longer CBS Sports Radio Network. It's Xfinity Sports Radio. I don't know, but I found a guy called JR. I don't know his last name. He just goes by JR, and it's JR Sports Brief, and he's awesome. And then there's another guy. His time slot got moved down, so when the Isotopes aren't playing, he's on during the afternoon guys on 610 now. I wish that show was on instead of the afternoon guys locally. But anyway, JR Sports Brief. Then I found a guy out of Wisconsin. It's not Zach Gelb, but he was talking about like what sports moments you remember vividly. And I thought, given that we're trying to talk more Lobo football, here's our question of the day. What UNM football moment do you remember vividly? Which I'm sure trumps, like, people are like, well, I have to think about one. And I'm sure there's a lot more worse ones than good ones. But I will start, Rick. And it is Hank Baskett and the no-call touchdown. You'd have to go and find it. Texas Tech, end of the second half, 2004, Friday night on ESPN2. Hank Baskett made a catch and got his foot down. I've asked Dontrell Moore about it on our show, and he was like, oh, hell yeah, he got his feet down. They got that call wrong. If there's anybody in the comments that remembers that, it was at University Stadium. Mike Leach was the head coach of Texas Tech. They ended up winning that game on a field goal. They should have, another season, they probably should have competed. They should have won a Mountain West title. But Hank Baskett making that catch in the back of the end zone from, I think, Casey Kelly, not Cole McCamey, but he made the catch. And they called a no touchdown. But I thought, man, that was, and anything Dontrell Moore did. I love Dontrell. As I always jokingly tell him, he's 1A. He's 1B as opposed to my Daniel Ferris 1A of former Lobos that I love to talk to. But that's one of my favorite moments. And maybe shutting out Nevada with Colin Kaepernick. I know those are pretty recent. You might go to if Ed was here in 1982, they went 10-1 and didn't make a bowl game. But that's my question, not only to Rick, but those of us still with us, if you wanted to throw out a moment you remember vividly.
For me, it was more of I guess a time period, and then I have a separate moment. But Brian Urlacher's senior season, my parents and I got the back of a Pizza Hut box offer for UNM season football tickets. I believe it was for $40 per person for the entire season. And we sat in grade school when Urlacher was a senior. What year was that? I don't know. We're sitting the whole season in the East bleachers, and just the performance he put on that year. Never forget watching him return punts, make plays all over the field. And the same kind of goes for Dontrell Moore's era. He was, I think, the best running back in UNM history, and just the plays he put up. But me personally, that I experienced in the crowd was 2007 at University of Arizona, when we were sitting in the end zone amongst the U of A crowd of about 10 UNM students, firing up the whole crowd there, getting screamed at and cussed at, and UNM winning the game, and their players running to us and jumping up and giving us high fives in the crowd as they walked out. And we were on top of the world. We felt like we had just won the Super Bowl. So I'll never forget moments like that we experienced personally, but just the good memories of the star players. Is anybody else in the comments got any yet?
Oh, Jimmy H said the Lobos whipping Nevada's ass in the New Mexico Bowl. I mean, that was a 9-4 team. Really, really good team. I didn't think about the U of A game we went to, and our friend Vincent Steiner, who went to U of A, and it was kind of a blur of a weekend, but Mark the Brit was there. I will never forget. Our buddy Martin met two British guys in the dorm who were studying abroad, Mark and Nick, and they were avid American football fans, and they still I think they both still watch Lobo basketball like religiously. So I haven't talked to Mark or Nick in some time, but they were some of the best Lobo fans that year. I will never forget a U of A fan. I don't think he went to college there. He didn't have a shirt on and he was probably drunk or, drugged out of his mind. But after they won, I'll never forget him running up to us in the stadium, like right when they won. And he just flipped it. I'm not going to do it, but he just flipped us right off. And I was like, I'd never been a part
I
of
was
that as a
getting
fan.
in full blown arguments with adults sitting behind me. It was a brutal time, but those were the times you love experiencing when your team wins and you can talk the shit to back it up. So those are the times you
Yeah, it
live
was
for.
great. I remember Mike going and hugging our friend Danny Martin's mom, Jody Martin, like at halftime or something, because she saw Mike. And I didn't know Jody Martin at the time. Our friend Danny Martin was on kick on the kickoff team. He was a walk on there. So he got to, run down the field on kickoff. But those were some good those were the, punch in the mouth Rocky teams that I loved. We're coming up on the 2-hour mark. Rick, I want to thank you joining for the latter half of this episode. Much props to Eric on getting Sonny Vaccaro, what was his nickname? The Grassroots Godfather. Essentially the guy who signed Nike, or not essentially, it was the guy who signed Michael Jordan at Nike. He's Matt Damon and Air. And if you really want to learn more about him, I recommend ESPN's 30 for 30 Soul Man. And you can also listen to our podcast or re-listen to this episode. He's at the beginning, so you don't have to listen to me, quite the guest compared to me coming on and hosting the show. But I appreciate him. Hey, follow us on X. And as I always say, the artist formerly known as Twitter, at the Pit Press NM. Follow us on Instagram, the Pit Press NM. Once again, email us our mailbag at the Pit Press NM at gmail.com with any ideas or comments that you have. Again, we appreciate all the listeners. Love you guys. My one guy,
Miguel Sanchez.
Oops, I don't know where Miguel Sanchez has been. Rick, I didn't hit you with this. Oh, where'd it go? Richard. Anything else? Hey, hit like, hit subscribe to our channel on YouTube, the Pit Press. I don't say that enough. I was watching one of the bad movie reviews that I do today. I was over listening to it on YouTube, and he had a clever way of saying hit like and subscribe to the channel. So please like and subscribe to us. Any ideas you have, and to all the guys that always listen to us, even though I was giving you a hard time, we appreciate it. We really do. Ed, Rick, Eric, and I, we all appreciate you. Much love. As I always say, and not to continue rambling, Eric and I started this because we felt the coverage in Albuquerque of UNM wasn't good enough. I know it's opinionated, but we're trying to give you more insight as we can. I think it's good for Albuquerque. So I think the Lobos are beloved more so than I probably realize. I've seen what the football stadium can look like when they're winning. So it's been 20 damn years. How long have you been coming here? 20 damn years, sir. We've only been open 8. That's from Road Trip. But yeah, I appreciate everybody listening and really happy we get to do things like Ed and I did last week. You know what we didn't talk about, Rick? Very quickly. Did you guys like the turnout for the alumni game Tuesday night? Rick wasn't there. Rick, I don't know what you know about it. Roman Martinez did win the 3-point shooting contest. My friend Steve, I went with my buddy Steven, and because of our friend Mike, we know a couple of players like Ferris and Doris, Gary, but I know that Steven wanted to let Roman and Ferris know he wanted his money back because there was no dunk contest. I don't know. They didn't have a dunk contest, but they had a youth game, and then they did the 3-point contest, and they played the game. I was schmoozing and talking to people the whole time. I know it was close. The TBT, those guys play on Friday against the Boise State alumni team. I think always a Bronco.
Who stood out? Who stood out in the game? Did any players stand out more?
I didn't watch enough of it. That would be a question for I'll tell you who stood out was Snake. For his activities afterwards. He definitely stood out to me. And I'll plead the fifth on the rest of it. He was in full paint even for the alumni game. I mean, you cannot shit on that man's dedication. He loves his Lobo basketball. Bryce Alford looked good. That I did take note. I mean, it's awesome to have him on the
one
team.
thing related to Bryce Alford today, he posted a picture from his camp, and in the picture was Chicago Bulls player and former UCLA Bruin Zach LaVine. So it looked like Zach LaVine was here in town at Alford's camp. So that's pretty awesome for the campers.
We had Bryce Alford on last year to promote his camp. We didn't get a chance to get him on this year, but Bryce was really good to us, and he was a pleasure to talk to. Maybe we'll get him on again. I know he went on Jeff Grammer's podcast. Those guys went on. I don't. Here's my criticism of UNM. It was hot as shit in there. The AC when you walked in was pumping, but it was still hot in there.
Yeah. So the Real Enchantment team plays tomorrow against what is it? Once a Bronco, Boise State alumni at 2 p.m. Mountain on Fox Sports.
I will be watching. I like the TBT. What do you think of the TBT, Rick?
I love it, man. Any type of basketball I will watch. I don't care what age, what gender, what level. If there's basketball being played at a park, I'll stop and watch a few plays. So, I love it. And I love seeing former college guys that we know, especially now that there's a New Mexico team. So I'm all for it. I love the other alumni teams too. Like Syracuse had a team for a while with Devendorf and Hakeem Warwick. I'm sure they've reloaded. Brandon Trish, some other guys that you would recognize. McNamara, I think, even played on one of those Syracuse teams.
The one guy that pops out to me big time was Aaron Kraft from Ohio State. Aaron Kraft was phenomenal. He was phenomenal at Ohio State. I don't know what they call their team. There was a guy on the team 2 years ago here, and I was looking at him running up and down the court, and I can't think. I wish Zach was on the enchantment. Yeah. I don't think Zach LaVine. I don't think Zach LaVine's going to play on the enchantment. There was a big guy, and I remember him playing at Pittsburgh, and I can't think of his name, but he was on LaFonso Ellis's team when LaFonso Ellis and J.R. Giddens got into it at the Pit, and LaFonso Ellis worked for ESPN, and it was on ESPN, and he had to apologize. Yeah, that was funny to see there. So it's real. I can't watch the summer league. I've watched a game and a half this year, and I want to bash my head against a brick.
So I mentioned this before, but I went to the summer league games that were here in San Francisco, the California Classic, and saw the Lakers play with Bronny James, the second coming up against the Kings. And yeah, the games are a little sloppy. You can tell that guys don't have much chemistry. Guys are trying to go one-on-one a little bit more, and there's not a lot of good ball movement. But it looked like Jalen House, our former Lobo, got about 17 minutes last night for the Celtics, scored 8 points, had, I believe, 2 steals and a couple assists. So a better showing for him last night than the day before, where he checked into the game, played hard defense, got in someone's face and got a technical foul, and then got subbed out of the game 2 minutes later in complete Jalen House fashion. So hopefully he's able to get a few more minutes. I think they play it tomorrow, the Celtics, that is. But yeah, the summer league is a very tough watch. I'd rather watch the TBT over that at this point. And one thing that was kind of
former Lobo.
One last thing. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say for Uncle Mo Udeze.
No, you go ahead.
He was on the Houston Rockets summer league roster for one game, and obviously he has left that to come join the Enchantment, as he played in that alumni game and is practicing with them. So he chose this $1 million shot, which I don't blame him, over probably some meaningless summer league minutes. So hopefully they make it worth his while and make a run.
Yeah, you and I were talking about that. I don't know if that's the best decision, but maybe reality checked in and he knows maybe summer league is not for. I didn't know you could just leave like that. So I guess he has no interest in playing in the NBA. I don't know. It's very weird to me that you would turn over the NBA summer league, as much as I think it sucks and it's just a money-making ploy in Vegas to come play for the TBT team. But again, maybe I don't know. I've always wanted to have the guy on the show. I'm not criticizing him. It's constructive criticism. I'm just a little flabbergasted by that decision. So I don't know why you would do that, but maybe, obviously he knows something that you and I don't. But I would probably rather be in the NBA Summer League than the TBT enchantment. But what I was going to say is former Lobo and Fort Lewis star David Kinienda, who blocked me on Facebook for reminding him that Kobe Bryant was dead. So I don't sound like I have a soul. I do. It's just every take of his is Kobe Bryant, how Kobe Bryant, hey, the Nuggets won the NBA Finals. Well, Kobe Bryant did this over Tim Duncan. It was like, do you even watch the NBA? He made a comment last year that I know he's not watching. I always message him trying to get him to start a show with me because he's an opinionated dude. And so am I. But he said he doesn't talk basketball with people that watch the summer league last year. So when I watched baseball, I had 2 TVs. So there were 2 summer league games on last year. I took a picture of it and posted on a Facebook page, on his Facebook page, and asked him if he would talk to me now. But I'm not criticizing. I am not saying this for the sake of saying it. Holy shit, the NBA Summer League sucks. Like, it was painful to watch. I watched soccer over the NBA Summer League on Sunday. I watched Euro and Copa America, and I had more fun watching the people break into the Miami Dolphins Hard Rock Stadium and Shakira getting, obviously Shakira, but that game getting delayed over the NBA. France, or what was it? England and Spain was more entertaining than the NBA Summer League. I don't know how you feel about that, Rick.
I didn't watch either, so I can't watch soccer. I would probably watch Summer League over soccer. That's how much I like basketball. But
right,
it's some of the toughest basketball to watch at this moment. TBT should be a little cleaner, I think, because the guys know each other. They've played together a long time. They usually have a coach that's familiar and they've been practicing. And a lot of the guys are professionals that play in the U.S. or abroad. So they're at a little bit higher level than even some of these guys coming straight out of college into the summer league. So I agree with you there. I'd rather see this TBT action, and excited to watch it tomorrow at 2.
I will be tuned in. What was I going to say? I think all drafts are overrated. I watched the MLB draft over the summer league. Anyway, all right, which was like watching paint dry, and some of the guys I didn't even know. All right, hey, we appreciate everybody watching again. X, the Pit Press NM, at the Pit Press NM. Follow us on the Pit Press NM on Instagram. Visit our website. I plan on writing. I was going to put down my thoughts on maybe what I took away from Mountain West Conference Media Days and my predictions for the season, even though they don't mean anything. At least it's something to get to our website. Hey, we appreciate everybody watching. Rick, I want to thank you for joining me as always. I love shooting the shit with you. And once again, I'm, to throw it out to Eric, man, great job getting Sonny Vaccaro on the Grassroots Godfather on the episode. You can check it out on YouTube, hit like or subscribe. And as always, Richard, thanks for joining, man. Hope you had a good time tonight.
I did. Thanks to everyone for listening. And thank you, Ryan.
We will come to you. This week was a little weird because of the TBT. We were going to do a show Monday. I kind of lost my voice. And then check out Road to the Pit, which is a high school basketball journey, but we also want to talk other high school athletics. Check out that on our YouTube page. Nick Nunez and Ed Nunez talked to former he's back there now, but former Cleveland head coach, Cleveland high school head coach, and then former offensive coordinator for the UNM Lobos, Heath Riddenhauer. Check out that episode. They talked to him last night. It was a live stream, but you can play that back on our YouTube channel. My name's Ryan Tamori. This is the Pit Press under the New Mexico Alumni Media Network, per se. Appreciate everybody watching. We will be back next Tuesday with a new slew of guests and fantastic sports conversation. Everybody
Big
have a
show.
great weekend.
Let him cook. Let him cook now. Let him cook. I said let him